Audrey and Rusty. I'm always so glad when Audrey gets in front of this microphone, when you have to hit those high notes and y'all can't hear me struggle. Thank you, Audrey. And now with the invocation, Robin.
Let us pray. Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, we come to you this beautiful day that you have created for us. We come to you with praise for these glorious gifts that you've given us. You love us, you protect us, and you fill us with your grace. We ask that you be with our leaders in our community, state, and nation as they're faced with situations that impact all our lives. And be with our speaker today as he addresses an increasing problem that we have not just here in our community, but nationwide as well. Please bless the food you have provided for us, and bless those who have prepared and served it. It's in your holy name we pray. Amen.
And now for our visiting Rotarian. Very important. Yeah.
Happy Monday, everybody. All right, we have three visiting Rotarians. First off, we have Tom Ledbetter from the West Metro. We have Alex Morris from the Lexington Club. And Mr. Johnny Moore from the Chapin Sunrise Club. He is our district governor, so we appreciate you being here today. And then any other guests here today, so if you come around with the microphone, there to the right.
Hello, I'm Robert Weston. It gives me great pleasure to introduce my second child, my daughter, Keenan Robbins from Atlanta, the mother of 3 of my grandchildren.
And I think that's it for today. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. And now for health and happiness.
Thank you, Louisa. A little bit of news. Hal Stevenson, and I don't blame him, I'd be proud as well. His daughter Noelle's next Netflix series, She-Ra, is entering its 3rd season, and I believe it started this past Friday. Congratulations. Don Motley let me know he is the managing partner of Scott & Company, CPA firm. They were named the best place to work in South Carolina by the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Congratulations. That is the news. For a little bit of happiness, I happen to be very fortunate. I get to work with older folks every day, and over the past several years I've watched them and noted them and tried to find out what some of their keys to success are. And I found 2 things that I would like to share with you today. Number one, they find humor in everyday events. And the second of those is they typically serve other people, similar to our motto, service above self. Humor every day. I love jokes, and I'm sure you do too, but a lot of times we can find humor just looking in the mirror. A lot of times we can find humor in everyday events. A good friend of mine was in sales, and he traveled the western part of South Carolina from Greenwood up towards the upstate, and he was hyper efficient. He was so efficient that he would only stop at a restaurant to eat lunch after 2 p.m. and that way the lunch crowd would be gone. And one particular day, he wheeled into a dairy, and sure enough, his car was the exact only one in the parking lot. So he's thinking, all right, I'm successful. He goes inside, he is the only customer. And he looked behind the counter, and there was only one employee, and she was back in the back, scraping the grill, getting it all clean, and she acknowledged him, sir, I'll be with you in a moment. So she washes her hands, comes around the counter at the cash register, and she looks at him and says, sir, what would you have for lunch? And he's looking at the menu, and he goes, I would like a chicken finger dinner. So she punches in the cash register, the drawer comes out, she takes his money, counts out his change, hands it back to him, and then she leans into the microphone and says, chicken dinner, one finger dinner. And then she goes back and cooks it. Somewhere along the line, there was a training program that really taught her to follow the rules. She was definitely a rule follower. As far as service, I did notice this one lady every day would leave the Finley house, and she had a bag. And she did it actually 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And after 1 or 2 observations of that, I finally just got up in there and said, Agnes, what do you do? And she said, well, I take candy to the veterans out at the VA nursing home. I said, great, hey, that is really nice. And you do that 3 days a week? She said, yes. And this natural next question was, how did you get started doing that? She said, well, I remember the exact day I began to take sweets or candy to folks in nursing homes. She was visiting the widow of a Methodist minister, and she walked in, she had nothing in her hands, and she saw Ms. Grace seated over there in a wheelchair, and she walked by the nurse's station, and there was one of those pink plastic baskets, you know, and it had a paper towel in it, and it had a lot of crumbs, and 2 of those butter cookies that when you were a kid, you put them on your finger. And so she grabbed the basket, and she went over to Grace, and she said, she didn't say a thing. Grace, with 2 hands, came up, and she plucked both of those cookies out of the basket. Agnes had intended to give one to somebody else. And so Agnes had this look on her face that caused Grace to look at her and said, Agnes, you know I only have 6 teeth in my head, and would you believe it? Every one of them is a sweet tooth. So there are strange ways that we get hooked into service. And for Agnes, that was it. She was hooked for the rest of her life. She was in her 80s when she was taking those pieces of candy to those veterans. So I would encourage you today to find some humor in everyday events, and also figure out one additional way that you can serve your fellow man. Thank you very much.
The cart buckets. Everybody has them on your table. Please don't forget to put your change in, or better, let's not forget this important program. And other announcements, I'm sorry to report that the club has had to accept the resignation of 2 of our members, Doug Stone and Chet Holt. Chet Wood. I've done that every time. Hate to lose them. But I hope that each of you realize just how valuable you are to this club. Our membership is our treasure. It's what distinguishes us from other clubs. We are simply the best. So if you find that you have a problem, speak to us, to me, to a board member, to our membership chairs. I don't know, Lynn Matthews, I saw Steve Bryant in here earlier. Any past president, we can work things out, whether it's a leave of absence that you need temporarily, or a payment plan, whatever. We can work it out. We just don't want to lose you. And we need you. I feel like God has blessed this club and made us large for a reason. And that's so that we can make a huge impact on the needs of this community. And we are doing well, but we can't continue without each one of you. So Just please speak up if you need something. We are a family and we will work together to help you. And now, one of the service projects that we did last year that was so much fun was a food packaging event. It was fellowship, fun, we had lots of music. And it was a real good feeling knowing that we were helping others in this community that needed help. So here with us today is Greg Wilkerson, who is with the outreach program, and he is the general manager. So he's going to tell you a little bit about the program. Greg?
Thank you, Lisa. I see a lot of familiar faces from last year. Thank you guys for having me out again today. I'm just going to share a little bit with the outreach program. Some of you may know from being here last year at the packaging event. But I'm just going to share a brief PowerPoint and just tell you a little bit about the outreach program. We got started back in 2004. Our founders, Floyd and Kathy Hammer, went to Tanzania to convert an old leprosy hospital to an AIDS hospital, saw all the hunger there, and said that we need to do something. So that's kind of how the outreach program got started. We've expanded, we have missions there. In Tanzania, we have schools there. We feed 1,200 children daily that would not have any means of support for food or education over in Tanzania. But domestically and locally here is where my heart is. There's a lot of hunger here in the United States as well. South Carolina is a kind of a hidden, hunger is a hidden issue, but it's monumental. There are 750,000 residents in South Carolina that are food insecure. So that's 1 in 6 of your friends or your neighbors that don't know where your next meal is going to come from. And that's shocking to me. Children, it's even higher. It's 1 in 4. So anything that we can do to help with that, I'm all for it. That's my heart, that's my passion. So I'm just going to share a little bit with you about the history of the outreach program. Again, like I said, founded in 2004 by Floyd and Kathy Hammer. Started in Tanzania. We can go to the next slide. We have packaged over 530 million meals from beginning, from the date. We partner nationally with United Way. There's other organizations, AARP, John Deere, Hasbro. Rotary is a big part of our organization as well. We have packaged over 5 million meals with Rotary since 2011. Okay, that's nearly 20,000 Rotary volunteers nationwide. And so there's some benefits to this here. It's open to all ages, so as you know, you brought family members, your children as well. It's a high-impact, hands-on service project. A lot of people want to do something for the community, don't know what to do. This gives them an opportunity to do a hands-on project, and then these meals can go back to your local community. And this just shows you can do a project of any size. We've done, our minimum meal is 10,000 meals, and you can do as large as you want. We've done up to 1 million meals in one project. So just some ideas here. You can do as many volunteers as you want, as many meals as you want. And these are our meal types. If you look on the tables, you can pass them around if you like. There's some meal samples on there. It has all of our meal samples on the table. There's a brochure as well that tells a little bit about the outreach program on the table. Feel free to take a look at that. But all these meals are formulated and designed to feed hunger here in the United States and domestically. Hunger overseas is a little different than it is here. So we're hungry, but we're picky on what we eat. So these meals actually taste good. My kids eat these meals as well. They love the mac and cheese. I think that's what you guys packaged here last year. So we have the mac and cheese, the oatmeal, apple cinnamon oatmeal meal, minestrone soup, cheesy rice, tomato basil pasta, fortified beans and rice meal, and I think I'm forgetting something. Cheesy rice. The cheesy rice and the gluten-free Spanish rice, those are 2 new meals that we've added. So, and we support backpack programs all over the country as well. So that's an option for you if you wanted to do something like that as well. This is a turnkey service project. The outreach program brings everything. So basically there's 3 things that you need. You just need volunteers, a place to hold the event, funds to pay for the meals. Okay? And they're 30 cents per meal. And so it's very reasonable. It's a tax 501c, so it's tax deductible as well. So on the day of the event, we bring in the truck, we deliver the supplies, and we set up the tables. And so it takes about 2 hours typically for an event, depending on what size it is, and about a half an hour for breakdown. So again, an event, you can package many thousands of meals, and it only take up a half a day, 3 or 4 hours of your time. And the good thing about this, you get to choose where you want the meals to go. We are fully accredited through Feeding America food banks. If you have a local food bank or food pantry here in this area that you guys would like to be a recipient for those meals, we can work with that, and those can go to those food pantries or even to school pantries as well. It has a consistent shelf life, so unfortunately these meals, they never go bad. It has a 2-year shelf life, but once they go into the food bank or the food pantries, those meals are distributed very quickly, so they don't sit there at all. They're very nutritious. They are fortified with vitamins and minerals. Very healthy meal, and it also has protein as well. So it's just not like eating, something out of a can or something like that. They're very, very formulated, very well made. And that is all I have today. Thank you for having me, and I just wanted to share something with you about that. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be here after the event, after the meeting. You can feel free to come up and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That wasn't nearly as long as you said it was going to take, so we've got some extra time. But here to introduce our speaker is Elliot Powell. And I know you need this praise.
Elliot, may I interrupt you before you get started? We have a guest with us. Joe, of course, is a Rotarian. Everybody knows Joe Wilson, but he has brought with him a guest today who is KB Kumar, who is the president and CEO of the Indian American Chamber of Commerce in Washington.
Glad you did that, Rusty. Thank you. Welcome, our distinguished guest today. I've always had a lot of distinguished members in this club. When I got involved with Salvation Army many, many years ago, I think Michael Capt and Reese Williams, Crutchfield, and others in this club had served on that board. And you may know that back in the day, we ran a homeless shelter in addition to other services in the community. Salvation Army is, as you know, worldwide, but known for all kinds of projects, but we became known for being the homeless shelter in Columbia. Many years that's when I joined the club, we were dealing with that, and we had moved down to the main location that we'll be talking about today, and we were having quite a few issues with the fact that the city had reneged on a $1 billion pledge. We needed our sewer lines redone, and really just were overwhelmed with that whole homeless experience and started looking for better solutions. And that's when this whole concept of transitions was born here in Columbia. And we are just so excited to have an update on that today. We've had many distinguished military heroes speak to our club over the years, and we've had guys, literally heroes like Jack Van Loan and Buck Schuler, I don't see today, but many others in here have had very distinguished military careers, but I don't know that anyone's had a more decorated career than this guy that we've got speaking with us today. Really very impressive. I would encourage everyone to go online and read his bio, his military Hall of Fame bio, I might add. So often we have folks who serve here in Columbia at Fort Jackson who fall in love with our community, and he and his family are another example, and we're just so excited to have quality individuals like yourself who decide to stay here and make a big difference, I might add, with what you're doing. Our speaker today is retired Colonel Craig Curry. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Transitions of the Midlands, the largest homeless shelter centered here in Columbia. He began work here in April 2012 after a 30-year career in the U.S. Army. His final posting was as the Deputy Commanding Officer at Fort Jackson. Having spent much of his career in Columbia, he's now proud to call Columbia his home. He's married to Maria. They have grown children. Laura was married to Edward with 3 grandchildren and works at Border Mission in Charleston. He's got Captain David Curry, who's married to Rosalie. Rosie. Okay, good. And they're stationed in Fort Benning with 1 grandchild. Paul, who's a financial analyst at Elliott Davis in Greenville, South Carolina, and he's married to Kayla. We're just excited to have you here today to talk about something that is very important to our community, but we could equally have a very interesting speech on just your career. Yeah, it won't happen today, but we might consider having you back because I'm very impressed by that.
I'm going to set the tone here a little bit and sort of set the stage for homelessness. I've got recent articles here in my hands. This guy here in Los Angeles, which probably has the worst homeless problem in America, he's the van lord. And he has 14 vans that he parks around the city, and you can pay $300 a month to sleep in one of the vans. So instead of landlords, you now have van lords in Los Angeles. So there's one guy. This is San Francisco, and they've got 30,000 homeless people there in their surrounding counties. And they go from county to county, and it's really hard to figure out what to do with folks because each county is isolated with a separate continuum of care. So the counties don't talk to each other, and so they have a real problem in San Francisco. Here's elderly. These are folks here 62 and older, and there's a bow wave between 55 and 65 for homelessness. That population is coming. It's the tail end of the baby boomers, and they give various reasons why that's a problem nationally. And again, here's another elderly one. The point in time count, I could go on and on. The point being to grab your interest at a national level, particularly the West Coast. Homelessness is a very serious problem. But I'm going to start here and put a more human face on this. Cynthia, let's go ahead. We'll do there we go. So we're going to call the guy sitting at this table Lamont. Let's call him Lamont, for lack of a better name. And Lamont, a week and a half ago, graduated from Transitions. And he looked at the certificate. It was like one of the only times in his life he's ever accomplished anything and graduated. And he's looking at the certificate, and he said, I finally did it. I finally made it. And he was crying when he said that. These are all case managers standing behind him, because afterwards we all went up and took a picture with him. But it was moving when he said, I made it. I want to talk to you about what that means in Transitions terms, to make it. Next slide, please. So our mission statement is to go out and find homeless people. We're going to, many of them walk to Transitions and come in. We're going to try to go out as well and find them, bring them into Transitions, so that engagement piece, equip them with what skills they might need, and then transition them into permanent housing. Permanent housing is the name of the game. You want to get people off the street and into a place where they can live and prosper. Next slide, please. So some of the accomplishments are listed there. Some numbers, 2,473. That's the number that we've put into permanent housing since we started in 2011. That number keeps growing. We're proud of that number. We've engaged and helped over 8,000 people. It's really over 9,000 now. 3,700 people, that's how many we saw last year and engaged on the streets. So Transitions sees a lot of homeless people. And my only thing, I'm trying to paint a picture here, the scope is large. This isn't 3 people hanging out somewhere. This is hundreds of people and thousands of people in the state of South Carolina. Next slide, please. Now we do this in a very concerted way. We have levels of beds, and we're trying to get you in. Of all the people who come into Transitions, we'll get about half of them into beds. The other half kind of want to go somewhere else. They come for the day, they're not real interested, and we're trying to constantly hook them in to getting them in a bed. If you can get someone into a bed, you can do a lot to help them. Because they've kind of said, yeah, I don't like being on the street. As long as people are going onto the street, using drugs, addictive, in nature, or what the problem, mental health, it's very hard to deal with someone. If the person's under a bridge, you can't really get them to medical appointments, you can't get them into a job, you really can't do much. You've got to get them into a shelter environment, or better yet, into a housing first, get them into an apartment. There's limited housing, so that's limited on what you can do. 3 levels of beds here. You can see them for yourself. The emergency is 30 days, the program 3 to 6 months, an extended program generally 6 months to a year. So you can stay at Transitions if you're attempting to do the right thing for a year or so. We get most people out in about 3 months and can get them into permanent housing. Next slide, please. So I always get asked, okay, who's at Transitions? Where are they from? What's going on there? Who are the people? And so here's a listing here. You can see the numbers. Predominantly, they're Richland County. The next largest county is Lexington. So you can see that most of the population are those 2 counties. A lot of South Carolinians from around the state. They come here for various reasons. Some are sent. Some are they have relatives here, and for whatever reason, they just thought it would be good to be here. And then out of state, it's consistently been around 15%. That number goes up and down a few percentage points. Dispel notions about busloads of people who are coming here from Atlanta or Charlotte. Has somebody come here from Atlanta or Charlotte? Yes. Okay, obviously, someone's getting off the bus from whatever. But busloads of people don't come here. And that's sort of a scare tactic that I would, recommend if you hear that one, say, hey, well, that's, this guy who talked at Rotary, he didn't say that, okay? I try to spread that at the different Rotaries. By the way, congratulations from Spring Valley. They said they were the best up there. So I'm going to have to go back and tell them, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. You got a great crowd here, too. So, we'll go back. I'll keep that amongst ourselves there. So again, but the gender you can see is predominantly male. It's not because we're mean, but the homeless population is predominantly male in the adult world. Women can do things to get beds with people, and that's, that they also have children involved, and often families are more forgiving of that. So the population is about 70-30 nationally. You can see some racial demographics there. And overall, we're 9% veteran of the whole population. You have to be kind of careful with that. A lot of people claim to be veterans. They're really not. But they think they're going to get treated better, so they say, yeah, I'm a veteran. And then you start talking to them, and it's like, what? You realize very quickly this guy doesn't have the foggiest idea of what he's even saying. The ages are there. That elderly one's creeping up. It's not a whole lot of young folks at 40s, 50s, 60s. A lot of folks there. Next slide, please. Upon entry to Transitions, 45% of the people say that they have a mental health issue. 50% say that they have a substance addiction issue. And And I just highlight that you can see the groups and partners that come in, and they do a great job to help us. We're grateful to our partners. Some of you are sitting in the room. And it's a team sport. You can't do everything for everybody. And so we need experts, we need partners where we can send people and get help. I'm not a professional counselor. I'm not a mental health specialist. I'm not an addiction specialist. But I now know enough to be dangerous, so my goal is, hey, you need to go see this person over here. You need to go see this organization. Hey, we're going to take you right now where people are going to help you. And a lot of that is a willingness on the recipient's part to say, yeah, I do need some help. And then you can make a lot of progress there on helping people. The veteran part there, different groups that come in, help people, and help get to a higher level. Next slide, please. Okay, I always got the business guys in the crowd. Tell me about the numbers. And so here's a numbers slide, if you can read it. The cost of transitions is much cheaper. It's $22 a day. Jail is $71. So if nothing else, it's cheaper. Hospitals are incredibly expensive. It's about $5,000 charge a day. So when you start comparing someone in the healthcare system versus someone in a shelter, there's a tremendous savings there. And so the numbers are incredibly large, which leaves partners like our Eau Claire Health Cooperative, they save $7 to $8 million a year in charge. And those aren't my numbers, that's the state's numbers. So they've done research projects. If you can prevent, it's a lot cheaper. What is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's very true in the homeless healthcare world. You can look at those, remember those, there's different numbers there, jobs programs and things at the bottom, trying to get people to work, and it's a never-ending process. Next slide, please. Lots of services are available at transitions, and that's through the partners. You can see a top person there, works for Henry Morris right out here from Salvation Army. They run our kitchen, so they're one of our largest partners at transitions. We've got different services, clothing, food, health care, washing, being able to go to the bathroom. I mean, that's actually, you say, well, the bathroom? No, that's actually a big deal. Try going to the bathroom in Columbia after 9 o'clock, after they close Finley Park. It's actually difficult. It's not an easy thing. Folks like Matt Kennel have worked on some solutions, and it's helped. There's a couple porta potties that are stuck out mysteriously on Gervais and on Assembly Street. And so they're out there for people to use, but bathrooms are a real issue. I know you just ate lunch, so you don't want to hear about this, but again, it's those kind of things you don't think about regularly that are often problems for people, and they need to be addressed in a serious manner. Next slide, please. So we're going to come back now to Lamont. Lamont has all kinds of problems. Now, Lamont was in Bishopville. And all I know about Bishopville is Doc Blanchard came there long ago and played for Army, okay? Those were in the glory days, and most West Point graduates sit around and dream about the past, okay? But Bishopville, the sheriff brought Lamont to Columbia, okay? Now, we can debate that and say whatever, but it was an hour and a half drive. He drove him, and he dropped him off at Oliver Gospel, okay? He didn't drop him off at Transitions. But Lamont was handicapped and is handicapped. And so he crutched around. He stayed with Oliver Gospel, but during the day he crutched around and he found Transitions. And once he found Transitions, he stayed there because we helped him get a permanently housed. He got permanently housed about 2 weeks ago. And Lamont has gone great guns when he came to Transitions. He went to all the classes. We have about 254 hours of class a month by different volunteers, different partners who would teach classes to folks to better equip them to get out of homelessness. And Lamont was there. Lamont was first in line at almost every class. And so it was easy to work with him. He had a disability payment. We got him into an apartment, and he's good to go. Lamont had ex-offender. He had disability, and he had substance. Okay, so on that personal scale for him, he was 3 of those. Rarely is someone 1 on that list. It's usually a combination of things that people are working on and doing. Next slide, please. Okay, so partners are here. I should mention Beth Irick is on here with Cooperative Ministry as well. Henry Morris with Salvation Army, Matt Kennel with City Center Partnership. So I'm not preaching to the choir here. I have them get up and talk some. But this is a team sport, and it's those partners that help you do a lot with clients. You can't do everything, and having the partners on site or in a position where they say, hey, we'll take your guy. We'll cut your guy in front of line and move him right in immediately for help. That's the kind of stuff that gets us 2,473 people placed into permanent housing. So great people, great partners, they come on site, they help us there, and they give us some kind of priority when we're dealing with folks. Next slide, please, Cynthia. The youth program for us is 18 to 24. I mean, you say, well, that's young adults. Yeah, it is. It's young adults. It's youth. It's not children. It's youth. We do special things with them. We'll room them together. We work on jobs with them. The bottom left, that client got a bike so he could ride to work and get there more easily. Plus, you can put your bike now. You know, John Andow's done a great job with Comet. You put your bikes on the bus or out front, get to where you're going, then get the bus and ride further. We're very dependent on the bus line for jobs and to live. If you're not on the bus line, you can't get there and you're just really hurting. So bus lines are critical for our folks in looking at that. Different social skills are done. And then we do some fun things, I admit it, okay? We take people to Carowinds. If you don't like it, see me afterwards and we'll talk. But that gives them, that's an annual trip, and they look forward to that. I mean, you gotta have something in life when you're 18 and 24, otherwise they'll find their own forms of fun, and none of us like them, okay? They're all bad things, and they do them on Friday and Saturday night. So that's not what we want. We're trying to encourage them and lead them forward where they can lead a productive life. Next slide, please. Oh, I had to put this one up because this one gets people fired up. So outreach, we have an outreach person and we're out trying to go to the different places. That tent was down by the river. Boy, it's an awesome campsite. And I could have spent months there. I mean, a great tent, sleeping bags, I mean, it's cooking units. I don't know how this guy, you know, we had a hard time doing anything with him. It's like we had a hard time convincing him to come, but he had everything in the woods. I think the police ran him out ultimately, though, so he had to move. All right, I think he lost all of his stuff when that happened. Under the bridge, you'll be surprised what's under bridge. It's really nice under bridges. One guy had mosquito netting up and had all kinds of ways to hang out there. It's very dry under a bridge. If you're in a good sleeping bag, you're going to be warm. So again, you've got to convince people to get out of this environment and go to the shelter environment. Some of these people are attempting to be off the grid. Finley Park is always sensitive. People want the homeless people gone from Finley Park. I don't know how many times I have people tell me that. I want people who are homeless gone from Finley Park. Okay, so don't act like you're telling me anything I haven't heard. But we've got to, again, we're trying to get them into a place where they can get help. And everybody's not convinced that they need to leave the outdoor environment. It's a tough sell. It's not always as easy as you think. Next slide, please. So more outreach here. Here was a camp we went to 2 weeks ago or so. And the top middle, you can see the panhandling sign, if you can read that. Those are my feet, those are my toes right there as I took the picture of it. So yeah, you know, panhandling, we are not for. And that's an issue around the city. Miami did a study several years ago. 80% of the people who panhandle were not homeless. So be careful when you decide that you're giving money to help someone on the street who's homeless. These pictures that you can't make out is just full of garbage. Most of those are empty liquor bottles. In fact, the sign's laying in the middle of a bunch of liquor bottles. You can't necessarily see that from the sign, but you know, if there's 3 things you're not going to get in the shelter system and with all the great partners trying to help people, you're not going to get money for drugs, you're not going to get money for alcohol, and you're not going to get money for cigarettes. So hence there's a need to panhandle. So think about that. I mean, we're not pro panhandle. In fact, you can get in trouble at transitions if we catch you panhandling. So just think about that as you go around. You know, it's usually, this is not a constructive job activity. This is not a progress to permanent housing. Next slide, please. The Career Center is, though. We've got a partnership with DEW, the Department of Employment Workforce. We have a full-time person who does nothing but help clients get work. And that's the name of the game. 70% of our clients need jobs. 30% or so will be disabled. So we clearly have to get people working to get them into some sort of ability to pay rent. And that's critical for us, and we definitely want to do that. Next slide, please. So the Inclement Weather Center comes. It starts 1 November and ends the end of March. We run that for the city. We are subcontractees under United Way. United Way actually has the contract from the city. And we partner a lot with the city to work that and make it happen. That's a 240-bed facility, men in one building, women in the other building, and it works well. It gets people off the street, and that's important. 2 years ago, I know of 5 homeless people who died in the elements. I mean, one of them died right outside the center after the season. It was like April 4th. They found the dead body laying by the fence where the guy had tried to climb into the shelter and died. So again, overexposure is real. The health of the population is very poor. And so you start to shiver at night in February or January and you die. So I mean, it is a real problem. We're grateful to the city that they have the shelter, and that works to get a lot of the population off the street. Next slide, please. Hurricanes, I know everybody's tired of hurricanes. I'm tired of hurricanes. I know you're probably more sick of hurricanes. We get involved with the city on those, try to get the people out of the storms. Try to keep people in the homeless shelter system instead of the Red Cross system. And the Red Cross does a lot of great things to help the community. And during these storms, that's a real issue. And it's better for the homeless people to stay engaged at shelters instead of trying to go over to Rebecca's shelters and say, hey, I want a better candy bar. Okay, so it's an issue that we fight through, and we work with the city on that and try to get as many people help. But we've had to jump through hoops during these hurricanes to help people and get them off the street and get them out of the storms. Next slide, please. You can volunteer at our website. There's some volunteer numbers there. We're always grateful for people to come in. We're also on the website and on those brochures on the table. We're always grateful for people who want to donate any money. Next slide. There's Vermont. He thanks you. I thank you. What are some questions that I can take right now? Yes, sir. We'll start here. Okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, I just was curious. I mean, obviously, a lot of these people come in and have health issues, and I'm sure they don't have any health insurance. So how do you handle that? So
we partner with Eau Claire Health Cooperative. They have a federal grant for homeless health care through it's not HUD, it's HRSA. And they actually have money to pay a staff. We have a nurse practitioner in a clinic on site, and people go there for help. If they don't do that, then they walk to the emergency room, and they're those high figures that you saw. So we're trying to get them help at the center. It's much more economical and a better way to get help. Plus, they know the people, and when they leave transitions, they can stay in Eau Claire at a different clinic and stay in their health system. Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about the landscape. First of all, with Lamont, when you say you made it, what was his process? Did you get him a job? Where did he end up? And how long was all that? But what's the landscape like with the different organizations like Oliver Gospel Mission versus Transitions versus the other services around town?
Okay, for Lamont, he was with us about 3 to 4 months. We helped him get his disability going. He had some woman problems. We'll leave it at that, in Bishopville. He left Bishopville for a reason, okay? So the sheriff drove him off. I don't really know the exact full story of everything, but in his interpretation, He got in some trouble. The sheriff said, we don't have anything, so he drove him. The point being, though, is we worked to restore his disability, and then we found him a place to live. Finding a place to live is difficult if you don't have a lot of funds. It's just there's a shortage of affordable housing. And we have a housing person who's totally dedicated to building rapport with landlords. So he was one of your disabled, the 30%, not the 70% that needed work. He has a disability and he can survive now in his apartment. And so he's not homeless anymore.
So what about the others? Do you do help them get jobs and train
Yes.
them to be employable? Tell us a little bit about how
That's the career center, and a lot of, employment right now, unemployment is 3.7%. So if you can't find a job, you really got to think about it. And a lot of our folks are entry-level sorts of, minimum wage jobs. So some of them have to work 2 jobs. The reality, to make the math work, you have to work. We have partnerships with companies. McIntyre Produce is a new one where they'll hire and start at $11.50. So there are jobs that they can sustain in if you want to work. And sometimes that's a challenge to convince people, hey, you know what, you need to get a job. That's not what some of them want to hear, but it's what they need to hear, and that's what we tell them. So we work with that group, and we're successful. We have a lot of people who want to work. 20 or 30% right now at transitions are working, but they don't earn enough to survive in their own place. So they're trying to save up a few months of rent. We have a rapid rehousing program that will pay for them to get placed into an apartment. Sometimes it's better to just jumpstart them and get them in there, instead of them taking 6 months to try to save their first and last month of deposit. So it's a tough landscape that we fight through all the time. Yes, sir.
Greg, we're seeing younger folks who we understand are either crack or other drugs showing up in the afternoon. They live under the bridges or whatever. Are some of those folks like this youth that you're talking about, that they're working there? How do you see that demographic, say 20-year-olds, 20 to 30-year-olds?
The youth that we have a high percent of addiction. So it's definitely there. I don't make light of it. We help them, we get them to Loradak, who's another one of our big partners, and try to work with substance issues with them. There's no magic bullet here. If you don't want to get off drugs, it's very hard to convince you to get off drugs. You get arrested or something happens to try to change your lifestyle, but it's a tough sell.